My name is Torange Khonsari. I'm from the organisation Public Works. Public Works is a collaborative and interdisciplinary art architecture practice that also works a lot with anthropology and in collaboration with companies like 30 Bird around performance as well. We're really interested in pushing the boundaries of different disciplines to a point that they start to become much more innovative and start to influence each other much more. And also we're really interested in social relations and relationships constructed within the different contexts that we work and seeing what there is in common between all these relations that we find. The artist in residency is something, maybe it's good to just give you a tiny bit of history. It started in the 1960s as a way for artists to go into institutions and organizations and try and unravel things that otherwise those organizations would not possibly see for themselves, and have a much more critical eye on things other than what that institution says they're specialized for. So that, for me, is the key thing about what an artist in residency is, that the artists go in and almost try to unravel and turn different aspects of that institution to find out things that they otherwise did not think was of value or did not think was important before. LMB as an organization is extremely interesting because not only its staff feel completely committed to what is actually being done here, but there is this extraordinary set of support, which is what we experienced through the time we were doing hanging outs in the LMB, which is why we were really interested in revealing these kind of mundane situations and social relationships that actually the people who are working in the building have. And we thought that was extremely fascinating in that people seem to be extremely happy somehow with the tasks they're doing and with what they're doing, and maybe that's because they feel quite passionate or supported. So in that sense, it's been very different to other organizations that we've worked with. Everybody has been extremely supportive in allowing us to do what we want and allowing us to access places, and very welcoming. So in that sense, it's been quite extraordinary as a big organization which has so many people. As a piece of architecture, I mean, I'm an architect, so I think it really fits the purpose of this building. It's incredibly clean and kind of laboratory-like. For us, it was a challenge within this context to create, within this atrium space, to create an object which within the budget would fit, which was big enough that would leave an impact, yet kind of have colors that does not just merge into the background, and so on. So it's been, as a space, it's been quite challenging for us to kind of juggle the cost and the type of space that it's in. But I think we've managed, so I'm happy about that. What drew me to the project was the fact that what we've seen with art in the scientific context, it's always been quite representational. And in a way, I don't really mean to say it dumbs it down, but it narrows it down to the most simplest kind of component of the scientific complexity of the scientific research that is happening, like a cell or something like that. And then that's kind of frozen in a solid object in one moment in time. And we've always found that that's slightly problematic and slightly not what an artist residency should actually be doing, but rather to actually go in within an institution like that, which is all about experimentation, it's about research, it's about the unknown, then we bring something which is about that, which is about experimentation, which is about the unknown. But actually it's not necessarily in service of the science or representation of the science, but they start to work together to actually, for the science to have an impact on culture or on the art. So how can that happen in that the art can be developed by the science and vice versa? So they can have a dual conversation rather than one-sided conversation, which is again about that disciplinary boundary and the confinement of that. The structure, first of all, is a method that we use in our practice in engaging the people within the context that we operate, to engage with the project. It's always a setting. So, we were artists in residence. So in a way, we wanted to create our place that we're rooted, not in another office in the main building, but we have our space, which is signified as the artist in residency space. But also we took the notion of residency quite literally in the idea of a home, which is why the project is called Home in the Service of Science, which is very much about the idea of taking root somewhere and becoming part of it. Another thing that is really important, and at the launch, I gave a quote on how important the analogy of home is, which is embedded, during the Roman times, when they wanted to organize their knowledge and philosophical knowledge around different topics, they used the home and the house as an analogy to organize knowledge around the different rooms. So somehow that idea of home became really important, and what we took from it was the key components of the home where ideas are formed. For example, the study, the shed, the parlour. So the parlour is where we're going to do hostings, and then we took other elements where you display or disseminate that knowledge, your corridors on your walls, or you store things under the stairs, or you have things on the shelves. So those were kind of the different components that we used and abstractly kind of put them together as part of this installation to start to have a conversation about what's the role of the home in knowledge production, since it's got such an ancient history in that, and bring that into another institution which is all about production of knowledge. So that's what the structure is. We've engaged scientists in our project in different ways. One is that we did this series of what we called hangouts, so this idea of residency again, hanging out in the laboratories, but we think that actually LMB is more than just the scientists and the laboratories, it's other staff. There's a huge amount of support staff without whom the building and the whole science actually would not be able to operate. So we've hung out not only in the laboratories, but in the workshops, in the reception, with the cleaners, in the storeroom, and we've really tried to engage and write up, in a way, our experiences in these different places and what people are contributing to this institution. And that's kind of one way, through these hangouts. The other way, which we are yet to start, and we hope that we get quite a lot of take up, is again this kind of across the different staff in the LMB to do these hostings. And these hostings will be really to start a conversation about how they can apply their experiences and their expertise to the structure, to its development, to the production of the art, and the production of the knowledge that we're trying to create, cultural knowledge that is, and how science or other fields can actually contribute to that. And we could have a conversation about how home, science and art start to have a kind of relationship or not. But I think that's a conversation that we'd like to host. Another way that we've been then disseminating that information is through the posters. the posters are a visual way that gives fragments of those conversations, narratives, observations. And there could be observations that the scientists do day in, day out, but maybe that's not something that the cleaners know about, or it might be not something that the receptionists know about, or vice versa. I talked about commonality earlier, about that we're interested in what people find in terms of social relationships, or what they might find in common. So that's something that we hope the posters could engender. But also we had music as part of the launch, and that was done by the scientists. So again, bringing out all the different talent that actually people in this building have away from a very narrow kind of idea of scientific fact. The responses we've had by scientists and other staff to the residency has been extremely positive. We hear things in the corridors which are maybe different to what we hear when they know we are the artists in residence. That is, we enjoy those as well. So for example, just to quote, somebody in the lift said the other day, that the posters are up, they're great, aren't they? And they need to bring the iron next time because there's so many creases. But I kind of enjoy those things. I enjoy hearing also, you know, critique. That's absolutely fine. That's part of us being here and having that conversation. But overall, it's been almost too welcoming, I would say, but extremely supportive. So. But I think at one point that it also has been very difficult for scientists to understand what it is that we're doing and why is that relevant and so on. So there's been, so I think it's a journey we're all going through, and I hope it's a fruitful one. The physical artifacts that could emerge at the end of this residency could be multiple. In a way. My personal wish after the effort and the care with which we made this structure would be that either parts of it or the whole thing can stay actually in the LMB, and it can be used as a way to engage with the public, as a way to have exhibitions, as a way to not be in little rooms or little cells for public kind of events or exhibitions or sharing, but it becomes a way that actually it's a legacy it can leave behind, where the different divisions or different staff could engage around the structure, could put posters up, could pin things up, could have discussions at the table, could have performances, you know. So that is something I would really like to continue as a conversation about whether that is possible. It will be a great shame to demolish all this and skip it in a way. So that's my desire. But I know that that's not how the conversation started. But then our ambition as artists went much higher. We wanted much higher product finish. So it's been finished at a very high standard, so why not? So that's for me, from the perspective of the installation and the posters, and the objects, which are the things I'm kind of really working towards. That's my ambition. But I also think what would be really great is to have a book at the end, where it's a visual book completely. Which has all of the posters, because these posters would change every month. So actually to have all the posters in there, to have all the objects and people's stories, the knickknacks I call them, which are at people's desks usually, but they all have an amazing story. They've been given to somebody by somebody else from the staff and so on. So I'm kind of really hoping that we would have the funds to produce that visual book at the end as well, to leave in the library. I would judge the success of the residency by the amount of collaboration by not just the scientists but also other staff in the LMB, in the production of the art, if you will, as we're going ahead. the co-production or collaborative efforts in making the performative element of the project, and kind of trying to analyze what sociabilities we leave behind, what social ties we might have ignited which were not there before, and whether there are any legacy in terms of those social relationships that could promote further discussions or further collaborations, or actually how does that go outside, that debate go outside the LMB into the art world maybe, or this as a model can be thought about by other scientific institutions in terms of how you do artist residencies in a much more process-based, experimental, but much more collaborative way, where they start to have a conversation with each other, and maybe this is just the beginning of a much longer term research or project.